Well, warm greetings to you all, and thank you for taking the time to join us for the Journey of a Comforter, live from Kansas and Jordan. We're thrilled to have so many of you join us. It looks like one of our bigger webinar gatherings ever, so we're really glad to have you with us for this, what we like to think of as kind of a behind-the-scenes look at MCC's work. We've lots of people joining us on Zoom and others on Facebook Live from multiple countries. So greetings, warm greetings from MCC to all of you. And thank you for the many ways in which you support MCC. We're pretty sure we've got some comforter makers on here today, so we might have some questions and ways for you to interact a little bit later on. And whether you make comforters or not, by joining, you're part of the MCC story. And we're just thrilled that we can offer you this unique way to see into how we serve together in the name of Christ. So my name is Rick Cober Bauman. I serve as the Executive Director of Mennonite Central Committee Canada. I'll be your host today, and I'm coming to you from a little office off the corner of my living room on a farm near Shakespeare, Ontario, southwestern Ontario, Canada. Now, a few logistics. Some of you are very experienced at this, but I will just say a few things about how to participate. So you'll be kept muted throughout so that you'll be able to have the best experience hearing our participants and our presenters. If you want to submit a question on Zoom, there's a Q&A function, and you find that in the black bar at the bottom of your screen that shows up when you move your mouse. And if you're on Facebook, you can submit questions through Facebook comments, and we'll have someone monitoring those, both of those actually, so that we'll try to deal with as many questions as we can. We'll deal with those after Alex and Kate have presented, so not to worry if you don't hear your question referenced before that. And as I said, we'll try to get to as many as we can. We never know. Sometimes we have a flood of questions, and other times participants are a little more subdued. So we'll see how that goes towards the end of the hour. It is being recorded, and so it will be made public after the live presentation today. So today, Journey of a Comforter, live from Kansas and Jordan. Well, every year, thanks to the support of many, many volunteers, again, I'm guessing some of you that are on today's webinar, MCC ships thousands of comforters to people who are displaced or in vulnerable situations around the world. And today we're going to focus on Jordan. Now, you might think of comforters largely as bed covers, and of course they are, but they are also room dividers, or carpets, or curtains, or wraps, or mattresses, and probably some other uses that we haven't listed today. And however they're used, they are a blessing to those recovering from disaster or lacking basic necessities. These colorful works of art are a tangible reminder to people that their needs are not forgotten, that they are not forgotten. And they send a very powerful and, may I say, warm message of hope and comfort. Today, we're going to hear about the communities putting these comforters together, and then their journey to their new home in Jordan, where they're distributed to displaced families and communities. So our presenters are going to speak each for 7, 8, maybe 10 minutes, and then we'll have the remainder of the hour for questions and conversation. So as I explained earlier, please submit your questions, Facebook comments, or the Q&A here in Zoom. Now let me say who our guests, our presenters are today. They're Kate Mast and Alex Azar. So welcome, Kate. Welcome, Alex. Kate, we know you as the Workroom Supervisor at the Material Resource Center in North Newton, Kansas, USA. Kate has worked for MCC for 5 years, and she tells us that working with comforters and the people that help to make them has remained a favorite part of her job. Outside of work, Kate enjoys going on walks, being outside, tending to her small garden, and 4 backyard chickens. I hope they give you lots of wonderful eggs, Kate. Alex Azar, our MCC Program Officer in Jordan. He was born and raised in Jordan, but he takes a lot of pride in being a Canadian, as his family immigrated in 1991 to Canada, where he lived as a true Canuck in Toronto, Ontario. That's just an hour and a half from where I am, Alex. And then in 2009, he moved back to Jordan, serving with MCC. He serves with his beautiful family, his wife, Suha, his 10-year-old son, Hani, and 8-year-old daughter, Annabella. So Alex and Kate, a warm welcome to you. Thank you for giving your time today. And Kate, I'm going to hand it over to you to take us behind the scenes, or maybe, behind the comforters, if you use them as dividers there, in North Newton, Kansas. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rick. Yes, so we're coming live from actually Heston, Kansas, because we are in the middle of a one-day blizzard here in Kansas. So we can't get into work. So I'm coming to you live from my craft room, which is actually very on par for like how so many of these comforters are being made in people's
Kate,
houses.
I think I see a bale behind you, don't I?
Yes, I brought a bale home because I knew it might snow, and so I wanted to be prepared. So
just pack that in your back seat, eh? Good for you.
Yes.
Well, wonderful.
Yes.
Sorry for the wrong location on your introduction, but now thanks for that context.
No worries. Yeah. So I will try to condense like the joy of making comforters into 10 minutes into my allotted time, but I could talk about this for so long. There's so much joy that comes from working together, from working with our hands, from being connected with our brothers and sisters all over the world. So I will just kind of go over a little bit of an overview of how we make comforters here in North Newton / Heston, Kansas. Like Rick said, there are many communities who are making comforters, and their journeys and their ways of doing it might be a little different. That's fine. This is like how we do it in Kansas here. So one of the first pieces of making a comforter is figuring out what fabric you want to use, right? And we rarely buy fabric. Most all of our fabric is donated from people, from scraps, from things that they've been working on. And so we just get in lots of donations of beautiful fabric, but we often have to kind of go through it and see what we can use, what we can't. I brought home one of our scrap buckets. Somebody brought this in. So I literally will have a volunteer take home all of these scraps. They will go through it. They will see what is good, what is not good, what is appropriate to use, and then they will cut it into squares. So I call this part of comforter making order out of chaos, right? All these scraps all come to us from different places, but yes, I have volunteers that just iron it and cut them into squares, and then once they have cut them into squares, they'll bring them to MCC. And then the next step of the process is going through all of those squares that people have cut and putting them into kind of like themes. And so these are 5.5-inch squares. So I know we need 196 of them, but no matter what size it is, we have little pieces of paper that say how many squares you need of what size to be able to make a 60 by 80 comforter. That's the size that we're looking for. That's about a twin size comforter, and that's like the standard size for MCC comforters. A little bit bigger, a little bit smaller is okay, but usually we say you can cover like a child with a twin size blanket, but you can't cover like a family with a child size blanket. So we try to keep them at twin size. So for example, these squares here, they have been counted out. They've been sorted into some sort of theme where they all kind of go together. And then I have volunteers that stop by the MCC Center and pick them up. And so they'll take them home, they'll lay them out, on the floor, on the couch, wherever, some people have a design wall, and they'll make them into a beautiful pattern to be able to sew together, to be able to piece together. Other options are, just taking larger pieces of fabric. They don't have to be cut into squares, and making them into whatever kind of design that people like to make them into. I get to see so many of the beautiful creative designs that people make. And I usually like take a picture on my cell phone of like the best ones. And I made a book of just like some of the very best, some of my very favorite designs that come in, because people are just so creative. It's such like an expression of joy, an expression of creativity, an expression of care. So yes, this is just like for my own personal looking. But sometimes if people are wanting inspiration, I let them see this. So yeah, so that next step is then piecing all of the pieces of fabric together to make a comforter top. So the comforter top is finished. It's brought into the MCC Center there in North Newton. And we have a drawer that pulls out that people put their finished comforter tops in. And I would say we get about 12 comforter tops on average a week, which is pretty good. Sometimes we get like 60, 80. Sometimes that drawer is so full. Sometimes it's not. It kind of depends. I think after our snowstorm, we'll have a lot because people like to stay inside and sew. Yeah. So anyways, so then on Thursdays, my volunteer group comes in, they open that drawer, they take out all the tops that have been sewn that week. They check them for quality. They check them for appropriate fabrics. They check them to make sure that they're sturdy. And then they will pair that top with a back, with an appropriate sized back, an appropriate color size, color that goes with the top. And then we'll fold them a certain way. We put them in boxes and get them ready for a tying party or a tying event. Some of those events happen in people's houses. Sometimes the event is just one person tying in a basement, at their house. I have some people that pick up, tops and backs and they'll tie 4 a week in their house, and so that's so much of the work has been getting done in people's houses, in church basements, places not where we're all together, like, big events, because it's like, yeah, because of the pandemic. So yeah, so it's appropriate that I'm coming to you from my craft room because that's where a lot of the work is done. So once we have the top and the back, then we have people tie it. So pretty much what tying a comforter is it's the top that people made out of all the scraps. It's the batting, which makes it warm. And then it's the backing. So it's 3 layers like a sandwich. And so tying is just making square knots right over left and left over right to keep all of those layers together. So it will make a comforter. So we try to tie 4 to 6 inches apart, and you tie it with a double knot or with a square knot so it doesn't come out. And yeah, so we'll have people tie them. Then we'll trim and pin and bind it. And then we have a really big bin at MCC where we put all of the finished comforters. We put them in there. And then whenever I have volunteer groups come in, I teach them how to do a final check. We check them for quality for the last time. We kind of do that all throughout the journey, but we do the final check before we fold it. So we fold the comforters into certain sizes. We have big carts that people have made that we put all 25 folded comforters on there. As far as quality, these are gifts that we are giving. We always want to make sure that we're sending our best. I have a comforter volunteer that says comforters for relief don't have to be ugly. And honestly, we believe that. Like, these comforters will go on to have a whole life of their own. And we don't know what that life will be. It might be that it will be like on the floor. It might be that it will cover a brand new baby who was just born and get dirty. It might cover someone who's dying. We don't know what the comforter will go on to do. But on our end, we want to make sure that it's a gift, that is something that is comforting. We also check to make sure that the fabrics are appropriate. So in that final check when we're folding, we check to make sure that there aren't any, like, there isn't camouflage, there isn't anything with guns or country flags or pigs, anything that might be seen as unclean or not comforting, right? There's a list of things that we check on there before we fold them up, just to make sure that they are something that brings love and peace to people instead of anything that might bring up other feelings. So once our volunteers have folded them, then they roll them back to our warehouse, and we have a special comforter baler that was specifically made to bale comforters. So then I have a volunteer that comes in once a week, and he takes all 25 of those comforters, puts it in the baler, presses the buttons, and it squishes all 25 of them into this tight, compact bale, which I have right here. So this is 25 comforters. This weighs about 50 pounds. I lugged it up the stairs to my craft room today because I needed you guys to see it, because I think it's so impressive. This is how they're sent. And that way we can get as many as possible on a pallet. So once they are baled like this, then we'll wrap them in plastic, place them on a pallet. I think they get stacked 3 high on the pallet. And then from North Newton, Kansas, we send all of our material resources to the headquarters in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. And that's the headquarters for MCC US. So all of the supplies go there, and then they get the requests from our partners. And so then they will load a container with whatever has been requested. So it might be canned meat and comforters. It might be canned meat, comforters, and hygiene kits. Whatever is requested, then these comforter bales will be put into a shipment, and then that's where Alex, then they get shipped, and then that's where Alex can kind of talk about what happens next. But there are so many different parts of making a comforter. I just think of like my volunteers, Howard and Neva, who cut the squares. I think of my volunteers, Martha, who pieces the squares. I think of my volunteer, Catherine, who measures the tops that come in. My volunteer, Nancy, who makes the back. My volunteer, Kara or Delvin, they tie the comforters. Then Gladys takes them home and she trims and pins and binds it in her house. And then I'll have a youth group or somebody fold the comforters. Then my volunteer Elton will come in and he'll bale the comforters. Then my volunteer Rick will take them on a forklift and put them in a truck to go to Ephrata, Pennsylvania. And so there are just so many people who are part of the story of a comforter on this end, and it still has yet to have a whole other life and a whole other part of its journey that is somewhat of a mystery to us, right? And so at this point, I'll hand it over to Alex. Alex, hopefully you can tell us a little bit about what happens once it has arrived to Jordan. So
Alex, can we just get a moment here before you start? Kate, thank you. That was amazing. Your enthusiasm is infectious in the best sort of way. Sorry, you got to use that word carefully during a pandemic, but that was really cool that you lugged a bale up. I loved your little book. I wonder how people get into your book and if they all know who's in it, but nonetheless, in the meantime, look at the results to this poll. If you go to your chat function, as you were coming on, many of you responded to what part of comforter making is your favorite? And it looks like piecing carries the day, almost a majority there at 49%. So lots of love for piecing, and then followed quickly by tying, binding, not so much for folding, and then lots of cheerers. Great that there are people in the stands cheering on all the piecers, tiers, binders, and folders. Thank you for participating. And now, we had earlier introduced Alex. Think of the journey all the way from Kansas across the ocean to the Middle East to Jordan, where Alex gets to tell us a little bit more about distribution. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Kate, for this informative tour. It's wonderful to see the work pre-made, then we receive it in Jordan. Of course, in short, I'm going to tell you those shipments being shipped from MCC usually would cross the Atlantic. And I had some shipments even from West Canada being shipped via Vancouver. So they would do the Pacific Ocean. Anyway, we get into the Red Sea. This is the port of Aqaba. This is the major port south of Jordan, where most of those shipments are delivered, pass through customs and Aqaba Authority. After that, they're shipped or by freight trucks to our partners, which is Caritas Jordan. That's our implementing partner in Jordan. I'll explain more to you with some pictures, take you to a good tour. So yeah, but speaking about the bales and the comforters, especially like Rick said, I've seen them myself being used in churches, halls where they were hosting many families, especially from Iraq, Christian families who fled the war in Iraq. Everybody thinks about Syria. There's many wars happening in the Middle East. There always is. So Iraq, like when they got to the churches, there would at least be like 70 to 100 people in one hall. And I've seen those comforters being divided or used as a divider between rooms, if you can call a sheet a divider between a family and another family. So this was really moving. And to be honest, it's a beautiful story once you see the distribution, once those shipments arrive in the same container that they were loaded somewhere in the US or Canada. They're unloaded at our partners. We don't use any forklifts, they're only just manpower. They would store it in a major hub for our partner. Then it is distributed because our partner has 17 centers across Jordan with a good infrastructure. So roughly we would say there could be 17 distribution centers. This is how the journey starts. And of course, the partners, the beneficiaries will be called in. Each participant or family will receive their own comforter or kits, the various many kits we provide generously from MCC. And I'm not sure, should I start with my, what do you call the presentation?
Yeah, please do, Alex.
Yeah. Thank you, my friend. So here I'll be very informative. This is, I call it really a decade of giving a generous support from MCC continued to Jordan. This is total and this is up to date. The last container we received was from Canada. This container arrived January 22nd. It had lots of mixed kits. So roughly, if you look at the numbers, when you see school kits, by the way, Jordan receives the most or the highest number of school kits per year from MCC. Thanks. As you see, the relief kits, 26,000, hygiene kits, 29, blankets. I said H&L because they're heavy blankets. Sometimes they're light, you use it for covers. So we receive them handsomely and they come handy. I'll tell you more stories. Infant kits has been popular here too. Toothpaste, we decided to just take them out of the kits due to concerns about date expiry. So our partner would always, for example, give the hygiene kit and the relief kit. With it is the toothpaste, so at least separately. So we make it easier. And teacher kits, ground mattresses, wheelchairs, and now just proudly I would say en route, even this generous year, the MCC managed to ship another 3 containers, which will total roughly 10 containers this year alone. So there is 3 en route to Jordan, will be arriving before March 2022. Next, please. Okay, this is roughly, I'm going to take you just it's an informative tour. So you think about, this is the population roughly in Jordan. We have lots of refugees coming in, lots of migrant workers like the Egyptian segment. Of course, you always hear about Palestinians, Syrians, and Iraqis. And I used multi, if you can see, there's lots of wars around. So you'll find different minorities, Sudanese, Yemeni, Libyans, Somali, Afghanistan, various. Those are also included in our project, which is the Material Resources Project and humanitarian aid we support. We deliberately target them because we feel they're underserved. So those are one of the good things MCC is doing. Next, please. Here, I'm going to introduce you to our partners. They're Caritas. What I love about this is their motto. Caritas is not a job, it's a mission. You'll find it in all their centers across the country. They're very friendly. One picture you see, this is where our containers are arriving at their storage houses. The other various pictures is how the distributions happen, where we pack the comforters, the school kits, relief kits. And the families are called by name on a certain day. And this is how the way it goes. Next, please. Okay, this is some highlights. I always tell you, my favorite is relief kits. So when I see a container filled with relief kits, I just go crazy, because I even call it a fountain or ice cream fountain. And this year we were lucky to have, I mean, generously from MCC canned food, and we distributed it in Jordan. It was a beautiful process. Next, please. Also, yeah, we were joined by the area directors. Some of you are familiar with Linda and James. They've been stationed in Jordan, so they were happily receiving one of those containers. I even dated it in August of the year 2020. So they were with us, and James, being a rep in Egypt, had a conversation with the Egyptian workers that were helping unload. Next. Yeah, here, this is a story about comforters. I'm going to tell you from my experience, what I experienced myself, heard, witnessed. Yeah, for example, this is a story about comforters was given to a lady in one of the distributions back in 2016. I'm going to give stories recent and new. Her name is Nova, and she really broke once we gave her those comforters. And I was curious. I approached her, tried to comfort her. Why was she that agitated? Or apparently she felt, and she was crying, that happily she would have those comforters and she could cover her children and son rather than put it under it, because they didn't have any mattresses and the floor was frozen. So this is the only way to add more comfort and warmth on top of the kids instead of under them. Next. Story of Mahmoud. He's from Syria. This was in August. As you see, by regulation, sometimes we don't like to embarrass, and we take a picture from behind. This is his mother receiving the comforter that made him happy. He's covering on his own. He doesn't have to share it with his brothers or siblings. And of course, the school kit had some colors in it, and he was happy. The sad thing is, you see that smile, he's smiling, but if you look closely at the picture, this is from his memory or what he can gather. So really, this was really moving for everyone at that time. And I'm sure this is traumatized child. We have to really never forget what words can create in a child, but a beautiful smile. Next. The story of Rose. Rose is from Syria. She was 5 years old when we took that story. The minute we gave her comforter and a school kit, she was crying. Was asking, why are you crying? You should be happy. She was telling, finally, I can hug my own comfort and cover alone, nobody to bother me. So this was really a sad, moving story. And she was happy and excited to get the school kit because she wants to follow always her siblings, brothers and sisters to school. And now she can. And of course, we told her, you have to wait another few years. And I'm sure she's grown up now and going to school. Next, please. Of course, yeah, here I'm bragging a little bit. I'm preparing the young Azars, my son and daughter. It was a shipment coming, and they were helping me to understand the work and preparing them for our future MCC's work. They were happy unloading. Annabella would not cheering more than laboring, but Tani was excited and he was doing like most of the moving. Thank you. Yeah, next, please. Of course, this is Caritas. He has a long stretch. He overreaches many people, even minorities, people with disabilities. So, we try to reach as much as we can. Let our generous material resources of MCC reach people where they need it. And this is Bushra. She was so happy receiving her school kit. She can't wait until she follows her sisters and brothers also to school. And I'm glad to inform you she's going to school and happy here in Jordan. Next, please. Here, I'm going to use this story. This is a good combination of comforters coming from Europe, the Mennonites from Europe, and the material resources like kits, relief kits from Canada and the US. This was a beautiful picture of support, common support that stretches. So if you look at the picture, there is lath. Of course, there was regulation by the government of Jordan not to take picture face to face, instead taking a distance. So we were really taking care about this angle. And this is a center in the north of Jordan where Caritas is providing, and we were calling very few numbers at a time, like each half an hour, at least 10 people, not more, as for COVID-19 regulations. So for example, here, as you see in the picture on the right, there's Laith. This is an Iraqi guy, and he was saying, oh, our faith in Christ will always guide me and guide my family. It has led my path to come across the Mennonites from Europe, and in January, where I found the shelter in their comfort, because they sent it. And here, and on this day where I was, he said, Christ shines through me with the material resources, school kits, hygiene kits, and relief kits received from North America. So this is a good combination. You see like how things just evolve, and lots of these stories like Kifah on this picture. Next, please. Okay, here if you see also Maruf, he's on the right. This is, of course, a person interviewed them. They received both the comforters and the material resources from Canada. So he says, each day I thank Christ for looking after my family. In the mid of the cold of January, I received those comforters, and they was a life-changing for me. A bunch made specially for me that warmed my heart and my kids from the Mennonites. And today, I'm showered by the support of their material resources and all the kits. So he was really thankful, and he broke also in tears. But these are moving moments that you hold on to. So yeah, and I just want to break those stories to you. You feel the impact of your support and what you've been doing. It's really moving. Next, please. Here, this I call it, in my own words, it was a carnival of giving. This December 6th, we received 3 shipments. As you see, 2 came from North America, the 04 and the 05 40-foot containers. The same day, we had received a 20-foot from the Mennonites from Europe, Switzerland. So it was a beautiful day, Carnival. It took all day to unload all these containers, but we were so happy. Even luckily, the representative for Jordan was available because they usually are stationed in Palestine. So we were lucky to have her that day. As you see in the picture, we were just overwhelmed. Next. Yeah, sadly, I need to also dedicate a material resources story. Elias Khouri, he's the father of Susie, who's our Jordan office finance manager, and she's one of the longest serving MCCs in the region. Her father had a beautiful story, being young, displaced in Palestine, and the Mennonites were the first people to come for aid. So he remembers he received 2 school kits over like few years period, and it stayed with him. If I'm not correct, he even kept the bag itself. And he was more than overwhelmed, happy to see his daughter working for MCC decades down the line. And sadly, he just passed away. And this is why I'm dedicating this for him in December of last year. And may he rest in peace. Next. Of course, yeah, we were visited by the Material Resources team and network. They had their annual meeting sometime in 2017. We were happy to show them around. We started our tours in schools and areas where they serve the material resources. Of course, the Jordan Valley is one of the places where we have so many partners. So this is where it starts. Next. And this is, of course, a picture. Maybe some faces are familiar here to you, lots of them actually. Those are the people I want to thank, because without them, this work would not happen. Such projects, MCC around the world will not be able to do those material resources projects. To them, I thank them, and much appreciation. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, wow, Alex, thank you. That was quite a journey, including right up to that last photo. I think I wondered if Kate was even in that photo.
Yeah, she is. She is.
That's yeah. You know, one of the things that struck me, Alex, in your presentation, we talk about material resources, and I know why we do that, you know, to distinguish them from financial resources or prayer resources. But so many times your stories, they focused on the non-material part of the gift. You talked about the young boy showing the picture he had drawn, you know, with military aircraft and bombs, and so in part the comforters are bringing a comfort around trauma. And then you talked about the way they warmed people spiritually in one of the photographs with the gentleman from Iraq. So it's not the first time, but I was struck again by your stories that it's a bit of an irony that we call these material resources when the impacts that they have probably at both ends of the journey are certainly material, but are also considerably more than that. So thanks for the rich stories. We've been getting lots of comments. Kate, if you want to turn your camera back on, that would be great. And we'll have both of you available here. It's hard to know, frankly, where to start with the questions, because this is a really active group. And I've got a couple here, though, that let's get started with. I'm going to put this one first to you, actually, Kate. Someone's asking, can we ballpark the number of volunteers that MCC might have working on comforters in a given year? Now, that's a tough question. I certainly wouldn't want to answer it. But if you could give us some sense of the number that might be in Kansas, and then we can sort of do our own estimating and expand that to material resource centers across the US and Canada. And, you know, maybe one of my wise colleagues is going to do the calculation while we talk, but let's hear it for your center there in Kansas.
Yeah, great question. And as like you heard me say, like so many different people work on it. Yeah, so let's see, MCC last year sent out about 45,000 comforters. So I mean, I don't, you know, in Kansas, I would say maybe we have I don't know, 300 to 400 people working on it, all
300 to
around,
400.
different
Wow.
communities.
Wow.
I mean, like doing little parts of it, right?
Right.
Like we'll count it. It takes everybody doing
Yeah.
what they like to do the most. Maybe that's a high estimate, but we have really big tying events that people come to, and I want to count all of those people in. So that's what
Well, I
that's what
don't
I'll
see
get.
why you wouldn't. Thanks, Kate. And then for the people listening and the person who asked the question, let's remember that in addition to Kansas, there's in the U.S. West Coast and Great Lakes and East Coast MCC, and then in Canada there's provincial MCCs in 5 of the provinces. All of them have material resource centers as well, and in all of those places, comforter making at all its stages is happening. So there'd be a big multiplier on top of the 400 from Kate. And if we get a better number than that, we'll be sure to share it. And another question, actually, this one's also going to be for Kate. Alex, sorry, I'm going to get some for you in a moment here. People are wondering about, well, what happens when quality control goes to work, and if something isn't quite good enough to send? I really liked you made the comment about something like, just because the comforters for relief doesn't mean it can't be beautiful, or something like that. But then this was more quality, I think, than only beauty. What happens? Why would you reject a comforter, and then what do you do with it?
Great question. Yeah, and it really depends. Like sometimes, yeah, comforters for relief don't have to be ugly. That's a theme. Yeah. It really depends on what it is, right? Whenever people are folding, if they find a tear or something like that, or a stain, sometimes we can work with that. Like we can fix it, we can mend it, we can put a patch over, if there's a stain or something like that. But if it's not something that you would gift to someone in your life as a gift, we won't send it. So we often, I mean, if we work really hard to like fix it, to be able to make it work. But if we can't use it, we sell them at the thrift store here. That we find other homes for them. But if we're going to be sending something all on this long journey, we want it to be a gift. And so we're always, all the different steps, we're doing quality control to make sure that it is something that can be washed on a river and a rock. Sometimes we think, we don't know what these comforters will be, but we want them to be sturdy enough, to be able to be washed on a river and then dried on a rock. So
wow,
yeah.
That's a great test to pass the, for Kate in her resource room. That's a great test. Hey, Alex, this one's for you. You said a bit about this. But could you go into a bit more detail? The question is, how are comforters distributed and who distributes them? Just tell us a little bit more about distribution.
Yeah, sure. Generally, we are not the implementing partners in MCC. Caritas is, because they have infrastructure, lots of centers. So the containers that was loaded somewhere in North America and even Europe now recently, they'll be arriving at our partner Caritas in Jordan. This is where they're unloaded at their, I would say, distribution center. From there, there will be like databases which MCC and Caritas shares about the beneficiaries who are entitled to receive whether they're vulnerable Jordanians, Syrians, Iraqi, and I told you the underserved minorities and even migrant workers. We try to reach many to make it more comprehensive. So anyway, Caritas will have this database and they will assign families in rotation, depending on the need and who's registered. Now, based on the database, it will show you, for example, the number of the families, how many people, household, they will entitled to receive, how many comforters, other relief kits, school kits, whatever we can muster, because we want to support the family in abundance. It just not want to give them one single thing. We try to give them a combo, so it really has an impact, and it saves lives, saves money. It's a life-changing. So this is part of the process. And what I love about it, I was at the MRC in Akron, and I'm at the receiving end. And this is I always brag about it, about the human touch. Much better when you have someone praying and doing this comforters for you, and someone else is hugging it and using, and he knows someone other human are thinking about him. This is priceless.
Alex, your enthusiasm pretty infectious too. It's just moving to hear your description of the impact that this has. If I may, just a really quick personal anecdote. we lost a dear friend. Her name was Hilda, and her husband Floyd a few years before. And I've had years of going to their home in our small town here, Tavistock, Southern Ontario, picking up not bales, of course, Kate, but armloads of quilts coming out of comforters coming out of their basement, heading to, in my case, MCC Ontario, because that's the Material Resource Center I live close to. And they did a count before he died, and they were long into triple digits. I don't know that they hit 1,000, but their personal output here was just incredible. And this was
Wow, yeah.
This was part of their ongoing gift to MCC, and it got profiled at their funeral. So this is one little example of ways in which
may they rest in peace. God bless them.
One couple contributed in the way that you folks are describing. Alex, I have another question for you.
Please.
This is not even so much about comforters, but people are just asking about the displaced families and individuals. What are the opportunities of them moving into safe and permanent housing? Do you have any comment on that?
At least what we know, we try. MCC is not chartered to work in refugee camps, but Jordan is receiving, always been a home since the Palestinian crisis. So we have lots of refugees, the Palestinians, Iraqis, they were coming during the last 2 decades, and the last decade was Syria mainly coming, touring in. Now, what's happening is usually they should come in, they will be received at refugee camps designed for them, especially the Syrians. Then later on, as they find more support or family, and depending on the donors and the donations we're receiving, we will be able to set them in like apartments, houses, if there is rent. Lots of projects have been helping, and Caritas was involved in a way. MCC is not this way, but of course we share information and we follow stories. So I would say the bulk of the refugees will stay in refugee camps, but if they were able to have some support, family network, other people, they fall under some program and donation, they will be able to find housing depending. But I would say it's significant, especially the Syrians. I would say 90% of them would want to go back to Syria because this is where their home and they loved it. Unlike other nations, I feel they were just torn apart. They don't want to go back to Iraq, for example, or Somalia, Sudan. But the Syrians were unique. They want to go back home.
Wow. Okay, Alex, thank you for that. I'm going to give you both a heads up. My next question is kind of a technical one. It's how long does it take for a container to get from either Canada or the US to Jordan? You can think about that, because I want a little brag moment here for webinar population. This looks like the biggest webinar attendance we've had. The last count was 188 of you on Zoom and another 37 of you on Facebook. I hope I got that right. Anyway, the total I got from my colleague Kwan was 225 people listening in. So thank you for joining us. And I know we've been asking you to put your questions in the Q&A, but for just a moment here, a little bit of audience participation. If you're a comforter maker, just put your name and where you are into the chat. And if you're on Facebook, then through the comment section. We're just curious to know who you are, where you are. If you want to reveal yourself, we'd love to get a sense of who and how many of you are comforter makers out there today. So Kate or Alex, which of you wants to answer the how long does it take? Oh, Alex is pitching to you, Kate.
Yeah, sure. If you have something, I'll give you that.
Alex, you actually might know this more. We don't ship like straight for, we don't ship straight from our warehouse. I mean, right. I have some guesses, but I feel like
okay, let's go to Alex.
Yeah,
Thanks, sure, no problem. Yeah, thanks to our team in Akron. I've been right away, for example, assigned the letter and the bill of landing for the containers. So roughly it usually takes between, if we're lucky, between 40 to 60 days to be shipped, give or take. Sometimes it takes from 5 days to maybe 10 delays just processing it at the port of Aqaba. So you're talking about usually 2 months is the average of a container being shipped from North America to reach our partner warehouse in Caritas. And of course, usually a week or two before they start distribution, depending on the plans laid ahead.
Wow. Thanks for that. And another more technical question for Kate. And as I ask this one, I'm just going to remind people that in the chat, on Zoom at least, there are links to go to the comforter part of our MCC website, so that technical questions like, well, what was the one I had? One person is saying, what is the size bigger than 60 by 80 that MCC would still accept? So I said, I'm going to pass on one of these technical questions to Kate, and then invite people to go to the website and pick up more tips there. Do you have any comment on how big can it be before you can't accept it, Kate?
Yeah. So we don't have a cutoff. We have a minimum, but not a cutoff.
Okay.
So they can be larger. Sometimes, you know, these are also going to people who might be on the move, you know, who might need to pack up everything and leave or flee. So, you know, sending a king size comforter might be a little big, yeah. And so that's why we just say as close to that twin size, the 60 by 80 as possible, because it also like gets pretty bulky, you know, in the bales and stuff like that. But we don't have like a cutoff. I would say queen size might be the biggest size. I mean, we would accept it, but it's nice to have them uniform twin size, 60 by 80 ish.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. And, you know, the chat just blew up here with my last ask, because now I can't find people's questions anymore, because so many people, I had, I think about 70 messages suddenly from people saying, my name is, and here's where I work, Altona, Manitoba,
quite interesting.
Kitchener-Waterloo. Oh, wow.
Beautiful people from everywhere. Beautiful.
Amazing. And then someone says, well, I'm not yet, but I'd like to get involved in sorting and ironing and cutting. And they're here in Ontario. So please make contact with the MCC office in Kitchener if you're the person who wants to get more involved. And now I have to decide. Oh, I know, there was a question about your book, Kate. I think maybe someone thought it's published and they can, you know, do they have to go on Amazon, and how can they get a closer look? And then someone said, can we see a few more of the comforters to be inspired? So I don't know if you want to show us more closely your book, or how you could give us some other images here, Kate, of to inspire the people that are on here today.
Sure, yes. My book is not published. It's not on Amazon. It's literally just pictures from my cell phone. But if you watch social media, so Anna, our social media coordinator, is actually really good about posting comforters. She's out of Kansas, and so she'll come to the office and I'll save some good ones for her, and she'll take pictures of them, you know, and post them. So here are some, you know, here's some here. But I actually have a really good inspiration. Look right here. So I have a volunteer that took home, you know, all those strips that I was showing you, like Order Out of Chaos, and she pieced them all in rainbow colors. So we have orange blocks, we have pink blocks, we have purple, we have blue. She put all those little seams together to be able to make these blocks. And so then we'll arrange them kind of in a rainbow order. But look at all those seams, all those pieces of fabric, all those scraps that will be put together to be made into a beautiful, I mean, you can play I Spy with this, right? You know, there's a cardinal on there. There's just like, yeah, people are so creative. But I would say watch MCC social media. Anna's really good about posting some of the really good ones, and also sharing with people. If they're, you know, if you're a part of a sewing group, ask them to send you pictures, or take pictures on your cell phone, or print them off and keep it, because it's so helpful whenever you aren't inspired to be able to just look at other past comforters and get inspired. So
wow, that was inspiring. Thank you. I mean, not to take anything away from your book, but those squares were remarkable. And you know, some people aren't asking questions, they're just saying things like, hey, with this inspiration, I will continue my piecing. Thank you. Someone else said, I never thought of the need for light and heavy comforters. And then the question actually is, are they baled separately? There is a question there. Kate, do you bale light and heavy separately?
Yeah, we used to. I would say in Kansas, we are pretty good about having like medium weight polyester batting. So they're medium comforters. So we bale those all together. But if we have really light ones, we'll make a bale of those. And if we have really heavy ones, we can make a bale of those. But ours are pretty medium, you know, which I mean then can be used for all different types. But
Okay,
yeah,
that's helpful.
Yeah, Rick, if I may say also,
Yeah,
this is
please,
the way I
Alex, go
receive-
ahead.
Yeah, just to give you more information about the comfortables. Yeah, we do receive them separately, heavy or medium or light, and it depends on the bale. You would see, for example, 20, then you'll know they're medium. Sometimes you'll find it 15. Then I know they're heavy, if not 12. You know, it depends. So the bale, how much it can take. And sweeping through also the questions, I noticed Virgil Klassen. He was mentioning the quality of the comforters. This stands true till today. He was part and working in the 60s in Jordan. Until today, those quality of the comforters are still mentioned and praised and even bragged. And sometimes people just fight to get the best comforters and their hands on. So beautiful story there.
Yeah, thanks for picking that up. I'm just reading that comment there too. That's a beautiful story, Alex. Thank you. Here's someone that's looking for a little bit of a historic comparison. How are comforters wrapped today as compared to, and the question says 2005. I don't know if you've got that depth of history, either of you. I've watched it change in my time at MCC, but Kate, you're doing this every day. What would you say about how that's evolved?
it has, you might be able to take this one, Rick. It's been the same since I've worked for MCC for 5 years. So we
Okay.
wrap them in like a plastic wrap and seal them. But yeah, maybe you can talk about
Well,
the evolution of it.
well, one of my memories was simply that I learned, and maybe this is still happening, that each material resource center wraps in a particular color. Like I know Ontario wrapped consistently in a particular color. Then if there were photographs, they would know for sure that they could talk to their volunteers that, oh, that particular bale came from our material resource center. I'm not sure if that's done in all of the centers. Another comment here from someone who's traveled to North Korea and watched these comforters get distributed in North Korean hospitals. Yeah, because this person didn't put the comment for everybody, I'm not going to say their name, but I've watched the same, also being in North Korea, DPRK, and seen how the impact of this was on kids. These were especially children's hospitals. Now, Sophia, thank you. You've written to everyone, so I can identify your name. From the MR warehouse in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The wrap is more or less uniform between all the warehouses. Okay, thanks for that, Sophia. You know, we are running within 7 or 8 minutes of the top of the hour, so we are going to have to wrap up fairly soon, but we do have time for some more questions. I'm just thrilled with all of the comments that have come in here about your work and a few questions that are going to need some follow-up. But I would also welcome people to send some more questions if they've got them. And
Just real quick, I saw Sophia just wrote, and she she is the material resource person in Manitoba, and she said the bales used to be compressed manually a number of years ago in Manitoba. I don't know, you have somebody sit on it. I don't know how that looks or how that works, but that's impressive.
I remember,
you know?
I remember an old tobacco baler that had a long oak handle on it that you didn't sit on, but you pulled on, almost hung on to develop enough pressure. It was a
wow.
May I say a reconciled or resurrected tobacco baler. And then I remember when it was, okay, I'm aging myself now, but I remember when it was replaced by a hydraulic baler, and it had been for years. You had to be of some strength and girth to run the baler because it was Armstrong power. Yeah. So that's a big change.
I built few myself at MRC in Akron, by the way. Yeah, so I know the pressure. And
Oh,
you
good for you.
apply. Yeah. So it's a good story.
A couple more questions coming in. Where does the batting come from? Somebody asked, where do the backs come from? So I guess that's a Kate question.
Sure, yeah. Backing and batting, that's always like the sourcing questions because we don't get those necessarily donated. So we have people that donate money to buy batting for our comforters, for our big comforter events. So we buy it in bulk from somewhere in Texas at this point, but and with backings, also we have people that piece the backings. And if we have donations, then we are able to buy like wide backing fabric. But mostly people take home big pieces of fabric and sew them together, 3 or 4 pieces to be able to make the back. And sometimes the backs are also works of art because they're pieced. And yeah, we always make like chiropractor jokes, like who's working on the backs today? And yeah, getting backs is a whole thing. It's a whole thing. But yeah, people sew those together as well.
So how creative does a back need to be before it becomes a front, before it becomes a top?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah, yeah, it happens sometimes.
Oh, that's cool. Someone else is asking, I guess, Alex, this one's for you. Do people choose their own comforter during distribution? Do recipients choose their own comforter?
No, to be honest, just for the sake of argument, no conflicts of interest. They're assigned by Caritas people. Each family will receive the bundle as it is.
Okay. Another question. I'm going to send this one to you, Kate. This person's wondering about ways to get younger people on board with making comforters, and maybe that's already happening. But what can you say about a younger generation being involved?
Are you kidding? That's one of my. I love that question. I love it.
Well, it's all yours, Kate.
I mean, I just feel like sewing is like a dying art, and like sewing is such a way that can empower people to like help people, And so I think what I always tell whenever I have like younger groups come into the workroom, I say, if anyone in your life ever tries to teach you how to sew, like take them up on it. Take them up on it because it's such a skill that you can use to help others, to help yourself, to mend your clothes. But like, yes. Yeah, so I think just like encouraging people to pass on the skill, the basic skill of sewing, and also like there's something like kind of addicting about like the colors and the patterns and like working with fabric, and so I think just like exposing them to the joy that you can find in it. It for especially people who love to work with their hands or like love the satisfaction of working together. So I think just like inviting them, letting them know that it's not something scary that like only your grandma can do, it's not. It's accessible for everyone. Yeah.
Pretty inspiring. And a comment too that MCC storytelling over the years has been a great inspiration for young people to make comforters. And this person is specifically referring to Europe. I think we've got like another hour of content here, folks. Like the comments and questions are just pouring in here. This is partly a testament to the amazing presentations from you, Kate, and from you, Alex. Thank you for the very engaging, inviting, and encouraging ways that you've shared with us today. And to all of you as participants, I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. We tried to sort of group some together that were similar. As I said earlier, this has just been a remarkable response. Clearly, comforters are getting at something that's very close to the heart and soul of what it means to share God's love and compassion with all in the name of Christ. So, I've actually got to make a few announcements. I may not remember. I must remember my own notes. So, after this is over, the content of this will be made public. It's being recorded, and we're going to keep sharing comforter content and celebrating the people who make comforters throughout the month with the Great Winter Warm-Up. So you can follow that on social media or visit the MCC website to know how to get involved. And we do a podcast called Relief Development and Podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. And the new episode that just dropped last week is about MCC Salter Lynette, who's working with migrants in Guatemala. and she shares her experience growing up with an undocumented parent. Take some time on your commute or walk to listen to this podcast. And it's another way, like today, to be able to connect with MCC. And thanks, Cameron, for putting up those links. You can go find those there, folks. So as I said, we're going to make this public. You can share it. You can listen to it again. And you will receive an email so that you can pass this on and let someone else share in these stories that you think might enjoy them. So it's the top of the hour. We need to say goodbye. Thank you so much. And for all of those of you out there, whether you're, what was it, a piecer, a binder, a tire, no, it would be tying first, then binding, and then folding, or the cheerers. Thank you so much. That's a remarkable way that you share God's love through MCC. We're so grateful, and thanks for joining us today. Peace to you all.